With that, I yield to Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we talk about education, kind of we're looking at it in a vacuum. We're talking about the struggles that low-income kids are having, and that's true. But Mrs. McMahon, you are also aware that in America we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had before. You are aware that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. You are aware, I suspect, that teachers are dealing with kids who are literally homeless, kids who come from dysfunctional families where there is violence. Does it concern you in America that we are living in a society where the people on top are doing phenomenally well, while 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck? And how do you think that impacts our educational system?
Thank you very much, Senator, for that question. First of all, let me say that I believe that teaching is one of the most noble professions that we have in our country, and we have so many good, dedicated teachers to help our students. I do think that we are trapping students often in low-performing schools, and that's why the president has such a strong policy towards school choice.
But you will agree, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you will agree that you can't just look at education. The truth is that middle class, upper middle class public schools in America generally do pretty well. But if you are homeless, if you were a homeless person and you had kids, the odds of your kids doing pretty well. And I'm just asking you, what do you think about the massive level of income and wealth inequality, the fact that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty? Is that something you think you might want to pay attention to?
Well, certainly, Senator, I do believe that we want to make sure that every child in our country has the opportunity to have equal access to a quality education. And the Department of Education really is not setting economic policy in the country. Well, we should focus on educating our children, and we should focus on it at the local level.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned correctly that we have many great teachers in America, right?
Yes.
If you as a businesswoman wanted to attract the best and the brightest, would you be starting them off after they leave school, maybe $50,000, $60,000 in debt with salaries of $35,000, $40,000? Or would you say, we respect, you talked about teaching being the noblest profession. I agree with you. Would you agree with me, support my legislation that says no teacher in America should earn at least $60,000 a year?
Well, certainly the pay to teachers is up to the states where those teachers reside. I do believe we should pay our teachers fairly. They spend so much time with our students, and they should be well compensated for their job.
Paying them fairly, nobody in the world will disagree with you. I mean, the question is, if teaching is a noble profession, if teaching is an important profession, you know, should we be paying them salaries commensurate with the value that of the work that they are doing? So I'm asking you a simple question. Would you recommend to states, as the leader of education in America, that teachers at least make $60,000 a year?
I would certainly recommend to states that teachers be paid what is commensurate with the kinds of jobs that are part of their states. Not all states have the same living costs. Not all states have the same ability to pay teachers, but to attract really good teachers and to keep them, we should definitely pay them commensurate with the job performance that they are undertaking.
Millions of young people, low-income people, are finding it very difficult to afford to go to college, and they're leaving school $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in debt. Pell Grant program provides assistance to over 7 million low-income young people in this country. Can you guarantee to us, if you are made a Secretary of Education, that no student in America will lose their Pell Grant as the department is dismantled?
Certainly, the defunding is not the goal here. The continuation of Pell Grants, I'd actually even like to see an expansion of Pell Grants. I'd like to see short-term certificates for Pell Grants for students who aren't going on to four-year universities, who could have the opportunity to use Pell Grants for skill-based learning.
Right, so what I'm hearing you say is Pell Grant program will continue under your administration?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Cassidy asked you an important question, and that is, do you agree, and let me just once again get your feelings on this, that if there is a movement to abolish the Department of Education, it has to go through the United States Congress?
Yes, it is set up by the United States Congress, and we work with Congress. It clearly cannot be shut down without it.
Good. Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Greer, thanks for being here, and I enjoyed our conversation in the office last month. Let me begin by saying, as I suspect you know, that I am not a great fan of unfettered free trade. I helped lead the effort when I was in the House against NAFTA and against permanent normal trade relations with China. I will never forget a visit that I made to the Macadillo area in Mexico, where I saw brand new factories and literally Mexican workers living in cardboard boxes. And the result, of course, was the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs, good-paying jobs in this country, transferring them to Mexico where people work for horrendous wages. That is the type of trade policy which I detest. But I want to move to an area to talk about the legal basis of what President Trump has done. President Trump said, Mr. Greer, that he had no choice in terms of Canada, and I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. He had no choice but to bypass Congress and to impose an emergency 25% tariff on Canada to stop, quote, the massive, end quote, amount of fentanyl and, quote, the millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from the northern border. Unfortunately, that's a lie. The truth is that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported just 43 pounds of fentanyl was seized at the Canadian border last year, representing just 0.2% of the total. Now, we could agree that 1 pound of fentanyl is too much. But if 0.2% constitutes an emergency, my guess is illegal drugs are coming in from every country in the world. And that gives the President of the United States incredible power to determine tariffs. Further, he said he talked about millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from Canada. In fact, last year there were 24,000 people, not millions and millions. First question, really, we can argue about tariffs, but why does the president have to lie all of the time in order to make his point?
So, Senator, I would just refute that when the president is talking about the nature of the emergency we have. I mean,
Can you talk a little bit closer into the mic, please?
Certainly. Senator, I would just say, I think you need to look at what the president issued in terms of the order for the legal basis for what we're doing, right? I mean, the president very rightly hit on this issue of fentanyl migration coming from northern southern borders, and it's a real emergency.
Drugs are a real emergency. 0.2%. You can then argue illegal drugs come from every country in the world. If you declare that as an emergency, you're giving the President of the United States unbelievable power. Let me go on that point. Let me mention to you what you probably know. 7 Republicans have joined a number of Democrats on legislation reasserting Congress's ability to play an active role in trade and tariffs. That, on the Republican side, was led by Senator Grassley. And he said, and I quote, "For too long, Congress has delegated its clear authority to regulate interstate and foreign commerce to the executive branch, et cetera, et cetera." He wants to reassert Congress's constitutional role and ensure Congress has a voice in trade policy, end of quote. In the last 2 weeks, all we have seen is reports in the newspaper. Congress has not had 1 ounce of authority in determining tariff policy. Do you think Congress should be completely left out of the process? Or does the president have emergency power to do anything he wants with regard to tariffs?
Senator, my staff has had over 200 meetings with congressional offices in the past 2 months to consult. The president's been very transparent about what he wants to do on tariffs. Congress delegated a law to him to take this action.
Mr. Greer, you can have all the meetings you want. You and I had a nice meeting. But at the end of the day, the president did exactly what he wanted to do without any discussion, formal discussion with members of Congress. He could make recommendations to Congress, that's for sure. Do you really think that he has the power under an emergency degree to reorder the trade world, global trade policy, without any input from the United States Congress?
Sir, Congress gave him this law where if he determines a national emergency, he can take appropriate action to regulate imports. That's what he's done. The
You
emergency
think
is
it's
the
a
trade
national
deficit.
emergency that 0.2% of fentanyl coming from Canada constitutes a national emergency?
Sir,
Do you?
The president has determined that
Do you?
Canada...
I'm asking you. You're
Oh,
not-
you're asking me about drug policy. So I agree with the president. If you have China and Canada and Mexico putting drugs into this country at different levels, then that's an emergency. We have to deal with it.
Look, we're not
We
going to
can't sit
argue
around
about the
anymore, sir.
danger of drugs. 0.2, 43 pounds of fentanyl. On that basis, the president can declare an emergency with any country on earth and take unlimited power. That's called authoritarianism. Okay? That's not what a democracy does. Do you have any concerns about all of that power going into the hands of the president?
Sir, Congress delegated this power to the president. He has to renew the emergency every year. He has to give reports to Congress. The Congress told him what he has to do to use this authority, and he's doing those things.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.